The Topiary Cat, Chapter 8, A Discovery. Tolly was acting oddly again. When the pair had enough of reading carvings, the cat seemed very eager to move on. This time he was heading to an area of the huge estate which the boy had always tried to avoid, but now felt impelled to follow. It was in the woodland, and much overgrown with brambles and nettles. Haythorpe Wood also had a reputation for being haunted. The guests didn't go there either. The house and gardens where the posh people had their parties and lived a life ordinary folks could only dream about were scrupulously maintained, but there was so much that it was too vast a job for a few gardeners to manage. The whole estate covered many acres and was hundreds of years old. Some of it hadn't been fully explored even now. The task of bringing the gardens back to life after the war fell to Grandpa 20 years ago. He delighted in rooting out the original plans from the attic and the big house, with their beautiful illustrations made by garden planners so long ago. It was slow, painstaking work, but extremely rewarding. When plans were too faded or illegible, he was allowed some artistic license, so where it simply stated Topiary Bush in a caption, he could use his imagination freely. Following the cat was becoming exceedingly arduous now, and with gathering gloom and a threat of rain, Richard was becoming a little concerned. He was also getting a bit scratched by thorns and stung by nettles. Something about Tolly's mood made him carry on, despite his misgivings, but nevertheless he was relieved when the cat halted, sat down and looked first ahead, then at Richard, and then back again. It was indistinct, covered in foliage and very dark, but there in front of them, surrounded by the remains of a cobbled area, was a large mound with a heavy wooden door cut into its side, almost obscured by brambles. This must have been there for centuries, as there were trees sprouting from the top, with roots extending down the sides like protecting arms. They approached the ancient door, Richard warily, the cat more confidently. To Richard's surprise, Tolly squeezed through a gap in the rotted timbers. The boy became very concerned at this. His precious cat had entered a ramshackle-looking construction that appeared ready to fall down. He was now desperately worried Tolly might get trapped in there. He would have to go in and make sure the cat was all right. Richard, heart beating furiously, gripped a heavy iron door handle. With a little effort, he managed to open the door enough to slide inside sideways. He could see more there than he expected, due to a skylight which, although covered with dead leaves, let a glimmer of light through. Tolly was sitting again, this time in front of a short flight of stairs leading downwards. As soon as Richard was inside, the cat abruptly shot down the steps, so now the boy felt compelled to follow. With some trepidation, the nervous lad, summoning up every ounce of bravery, descended the steps to discover a narrow, dimly lit tunnel. This must have been only a few feet under the woodland floor, and had thick glass roof lights at intervals, albeit also covered in roots and debris from the trees above. He could see alcoves on both sides of the path set into the walls, but as he had no torch, he couldn't see very much, and anyway he was too scared to peer in. Who knows what might be lurking in there? The cat was now striding confidently ahead, with some speed. He obviously knew where he was going, even if the young master didn't. The passage sloped gently downwards, which Richard found a little disturbing, but something about his beloved cat's demeanour encouraged him to continue this bold adventure. After some yards, the tunnel became more twisty, so one could not see so far ahead. After yet another bend in the path, Richard could see a slightly lighter area, which turned the image of Tolly into a silhouette. His cat was now sitting down, staring straight in front of him. Emerging into the light, Richard took stock of his surroundings. It was a circular room, bathed in light, a bit like the geodesic domes he had seen in the illustrated encyclopedia Grandpa bought him last Christmas. All around the circumference was a stone bench. Looking up, he was startled to see fish swimming above his head. Where on earth had the pair arrived? Richard thought for a moment about the direction in which they had travelled, and it dawned on him. They must have been heading towards the ornamental lake, the place where Tolly had been so disturbed by the statue a few days ago. Now, however, something else caught his eye, which made him even more excited. The sculpture on the round dais at the centre of the dome, which had also transfixed Tolly. It was a bronze representation of a cat, much bigger than a lion, but adorned with decorative jewellery such as those he had seen in illustrations of Egyptian cat dogs. Even more extraordinary was another simple fact, plain for all to see. The constellation that Richard had imprinted on his eyes last night was exactly the same shape as this statue. Richard could see an inscription on the platform upon which this magnificent beast stood. It read, "Bastet, Egyptian goddess of cats, defender of the innocents, avenger of the wronged." What was surprising was that, unusually, the cat was not depicted as seated as he had seen in his books, but striding forward with an expression in her eyes that he found not a little disturbing. He picked Tolly up and headed rapidly back up the increasingly gloomy tunnel to the mound and out into the woods beyond. In spite of this extraordinary discovery, he wasn't keen to spend long inside there. Something felt threatening about it. Outside, in the fresh air, there was now a howling wind and driving rain. He hurried home, not even stopping to find out what had happened with Grandpa and the statues. Sometimes a lad just needs his mother. Don't miss the next chapter of The Topiary Cat, read by Richard Saunders.